Hi, welcome. This is Divine Images Production. Giving the right outlook is our slogan because we like to highlight on real life challenges, but that with a solution. So I here, Tyrone A. Jackson, is going to be touching on a very sensitive subject here today with a personal testimony from Barbara Rivera and the school system and the drugging of children. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Good.
Great,
Thank you.
So I've had the pleasure of listening to you on several occasions. The last time was at CCHR exhibit where they're touching on psychiatric drugs and the abuse of the system that's been in place for over 50 years now.
Mhm.
And when I interviewed you before, you highlighted on some very sensitive area. And I'd like to hear your personal story, how you got into having your own private school, what led you down that road to now having a nice school from kindergarten to high school now.
Mhm.
So that's good. So give us a backstory.
Okay, so the backstory is I have 4 children, and my oldest son, I was very young with 4. That's a whole other documentary, Tyrone. 28 with 4 children. My oldest son, Damon, was 6 years old, bilingual, extremely well-mannered, very bright, very personable. You could take him to the Keys, he wouldn't complain. He would go on sleepovers. He was a dream child. And I figured he's going to be loved in his school. I was loved going to public school. It was a great experience back 100 years ago. And 2 weeks into Damon's first grade year, the teacher pulls me aside. It's like, well, he is mentally handicapped. Those were her exact words. Mentally handicapped. He needs to be screened and medicated. And I'm like,
Wow.
why? And it was because he wasn't reading. And I'm like, okay, it's not that he can't read. He hasn't been taught to read. It was a huge problem with the school. They said he also confuses the 6 and the 9. I'm like, but that's easy to confuse because they look the same.
Right.
If he confused a cow and a chair, I would be concerned. But he didn't. And like I say, he learned 2 languages. He's fluent in both, very well-mannered, helped with his brothers and sisters. So I was somewhat shocked that this was coming my direction. Tutoring was never mentioned. Smaller classes was never mentioned. The woman had 32 children in a class.
That's a problem right there in itself.
That's a problem right there in itself. I had 4, and people were saying, oh, you're crazy, you have 4. There's no adult who can manage 32 kids. And there's no certificate, there's no PhD, any of these that can get somebody to competently manage and teach 32 children on their own. That's number 1.
Right.
Number 2, I looked at what he was reading, and there's no phonics.
No phonics?
No phonics. And phonics is really the word phonics is sound, phone, you listen, right? And there's a technology to reading English. Just the same way there's a technology to making pancakes. If you know the technology, 100% of the time your pancakes are going to come out 100% wonderful.
Right.
And that's for anything. A technology to change a tire, a technology to apply makeup, a technology to dance, a technology to paint. There's a way to do something right. And if you don't do the steps, you're not going to end up with a result.
Right. There's a guide to everything.
There's a guide to everything. Plus, when I was growing up, again, 100 years ago, I think I was in first grade in 1970, maybe, we learned phonics. We learned sounds, and we put them together, and it was a slow progression. In kindergarten, we did not learn anything. We learned how to behave in a group. It was singing songs, a police officer would come in, a firefighter would come in, we practiced our manners, we lined up to go to the restroom, we had 3 or 4 recesses, there was no homework, there was no testing, because kindergarten means children playing in the garden. That's what kindergarten really means. All of this now, pre-K1, pre-K2, and we have the academics and they're writing book reports. It's nonsense. That right there, we're stressing out the children. Plus, going back to my son, he's getting 2 and 3 hours of homework. I'm like, what are we doing with a 6-year-old giving him homework? Again, comparing my experience. After school, we were expected to help out our families.
Right.
And that was one thing. Every day, the teacher, after we said the Pledge of Allegiance, the teacher would go around. So who helped their mom and their dad last night? And you'd raise your hand. What did you do? Oh, I cut the ends off the green beans for dinner. I helped my dad in the garage. It was very family oriented, and you were an important part of the family, even though you were in kinder, first, or second grade. You had importance. You could contribute. You weren't doing work. I didn't get homework till 5th grade. And that was like writing spelling words 3 times each or your multiplication tables, whatever. Anyway, so my son was lost. And I saw him go from this vibrant child to an anxious, he would try to hide before school, he would cry for anything, nervous, upset, stomach problems, sick. And I'm like, what changed? School. So I ended up taking him out of school. And I waited too long. I was this big with number 4. And I waited till the end of 1st grade, and my son thought he was stupid. And that, to me, is like a knife through the heart. There's no 6-year-old on the planet who has the right to feel stupid. And I don't care if they're special needs, I don't care blind, deaf, they should feel on top of the world. That's our job as adults. That's our job as parents. That's the job of the teacher as well, is to inspire that child.
Right, because perception is everything. And based on how you perceive a thing determines how you receive it.
Exactly. And my son perceived that he was dumb. There was something wrong with him. And again, that's like, what are we doing? So I took him out of school. I'm an artist. I paint. I'm quite good. That's how I was making my way. And I'm like, okay, it's time to put the paint down and create something else. And I'm going to create a school. I'm in a 400 square foot apartment. I got rid of some furniture. I set up some desks. And I told friends, yeah, I'm not going to send Damon back to school. I'm going to homeschool. Oh, I want you to do that. How much are you going to charge me? I think I charge $75 a week, a couple of $100 for materials every so often, et cetera, et cetera. Very loose.
Were the other friends who brought in their kids to your class, did they have some of the same conviction or same challenges at these schools as well?
Yes and no. Because my son was 7 when I started homeschooling and my daughter was 4, I only accepted 7-year-olds or 4-year-olds. Okay. Because at that point, I was terrified. I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm like, I figure I can't ruin a 4-year-old.
Right.
You know, a 4-year-old's going to be quite tolerant to let me get the hang of things. And thankfully they were, you know. So I had 3 7-year-olds and I think 11 4-year-olds. And then my son Adam was 1 and Michael was a few months old, and just made it work. And it took me about a year to really get my footing on this, where every day, according to the homeschool guidelines, you have to keep a log, and I would keep the log on each and every student, what we did for science, what we did for social studies, etc. And I was very hands-on. I'm like, okay, what do I want? What are these kids interested in? So I'd ask them, what are you interested in? Tyrone, what do you want to learn about? I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. Well, good, we're going to incorporate space. We're going to learn about space. I want to be a chef. Well, good, we're going to teach you some cooking skills. And all the kids would do it. It was such a small group.
That's pretty neat that you interacted to something that they were inspired about.
That's the only way.
For.
That's the only way it works. So one of the things that was considered, and is considered now today, sign of a mental illness or sign of a learning disability, is that the child only does well on the topics he's interested in. And I'm like, that's his God-given right.
Right.
That's his God-given right to be interested in something. Who says you have to be interested in everything? I have no idea how a light bulb works. I have no idea how to fix my computer. I don't care to know. I can paint, I can raise a child, I can cook. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm interested in those things. I don't expect you and I to have the same interest, and for the school system to judge somebody by, oh, they're only good at certain things, not everything. There's no human who can stand up to that. They're all held to the same standard, right? If I really want to get nasty, which I have with some people. I'm like, good. So then let's say every woman who's given birth to 4 children is a size 4. Let's put that in as a standard. You'll see outrage.
Right.
Let's go test all of the drivers who've been driving for 25 years and let's tell them mandatory they have to take their driving test again. There's going to be pandemonium. But yet on a 5-year-old we can test them, on a 6-year-old we can test them, we can scrutinize them. And on a 3rd grader, after they suffer through a year of doing hours of homework, nonsense lessons written by psychologists, not even the experts in the field anymore.
So not written by teachers, but psychiatrists.
Or psychologists. Like if you look at the books, I didn't bring any here, but if you look at the textbooks, the math books that I grew up with, which I was looking at when you came into my office, authored by 3 people.
Okay.
Now the math books, PhD, this, behavior analyst, this. I don't want a behavioral analyst teaching my son math. That's part of the problem why we don't have math these days, is we've handed it over to somebody else. And if you look at, like, just to go off on one little tangent here, if you look at homeschooled children in some ways aren't allowed to compete with academically with children in the public school system because they're considered to have such a great advantage. And they test higher because they are, one, encouraged to pursue what they want to pursue. And yes, reading, writing, and math, those are the 3 key things. But if you want to be an astronaut, guess what? You're still going to need reading, writing, math.
Correct.
So we could build your reading, writing, math using even the same worksheets that we're giving to the ballerina. But the ballerina needs to learn how to read for ballet. And you want to learn to read because you're going to be an astronaut. And when you grow up, the chances of her being a ballerina and you being an astronaut are slim anyway. But that's what I have to go on.
Right.
So we're going to go with that. And again, that's kind of how I was treated when I was in school. All the teachers knew I drew. I like to draw. So when I finished my assignments, they were like, oh, Barbara, it is Halloween and we just don't have enough decorations. Here's some crayons. Could you make some pumpkins for us? And they would put them on the wall. You can imagine what my pumpkins looked like when I was 6.
Right.
But the fact that the teachers put them on the wall, and then the 3rd grade teacher would come in, it's like, I want Barbara to do a pumpkin for my door. Or I want Karen to help me with a pumpkin. Look at that candy cane. It looks like, it's like a lot of validation.
Right. Appreciation goes a long way.
Appreciation, and also focus on the ability. Now the school has flipped to where they focus on the disability only, and we're ruining our kids, and we're getting the parents on board to like, oh, well, he's this, he's that, he's this, he's that.
Right. Focusing on disability seems like such a negative vibe, if you will, to where you feel like you're never going to get above that situation.
Right, you're never good enough. And the fact of the matter is we have people in the Olympics who have no legs, and they are running. No one, they're not focused on their disability. All they see is a challenge to overcome.
Right. Personally, I've had a privilege in my career to work with the Academy of the Blind as well as do sports activity with the deaf. And I'm telling you, they have more emphasis in exceeding beyond anybody else's imagination.
Right.
They don't focus on their handicap. They don't focus on their disability. All they want to do is be given the opportunity to compete just like the rest of everyone else. Exactly. So with my son, and when I speak, I present him as the perfect baby. And just like any parent or grandparent, when that baby is born, it's the perfect child. Right.
No matter what condition they're in. Fortunately for me, thank God, my son was healthy, 10 fingers, 10 toes. He rolled over when he was supposed to roll over. He sat up when he was supposed to sit up. All of those benchmarks, right? Which honestly I don't even care about. But he was a functioning child. And who found fault with him? The school system. That's a problem to me. And now I'm at the opposite end of homeschooling. All 4 of my children are done. The youngest is going to turn 27. I feel like an old person. And Damon's now 34.
What's some of the achievement? So after Damien graduated from high school, What kind of career did he pursue?
Well, he helps me with the school. The point with Damon is his IQ is over 140. The school system would not have done that for him.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And all of my children are extremely high IQ kids. The other thing, and it's not just mine, my gosh, about 20 years ago, I guess Damon was about 12. My friend, my best friend, she got ill, and it was something she wasn't going to recover from. And she's like, I have some serious things to talk to you about. I need you to raise my son because I'm not able to. And so I took this boy. He was like a little son of a you-know-what. F this, F that, whatever. I took him when he was 9. And he would technically be my middle child. He's right smack in the middle. His IQ is also high. He was homeschooled. So it's not exclusive to the DNA. I don't believe that. I don't believe the DNA story. Oh, because she couldn't study, her children can't study. That's a lie. Otherwise, I gave birth to 2 musicians. I have no music in me. I can barely play the radio. And these boys can play multiple instruments, sing, and all of this. I can't do any of that. That's not DNA. That's their own creativity.
Right. It really comes down to opportunity and what you're exposed to.
That's right.
In a nutshell.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, probably, anyway, so you have the drugging, which was really strong 27 years ago when I started this, and it's only gotten worse. So, when I looked at my son and I looked at homeschooling, I really wasn't looking too far in the future. I needed to do something right now. The boat was sinking. I'm taking on water. I need to do something. I'm plugging the holes with the t-shirt, looking for a cope. How do I cope my way out of it? And I ended up moving from a small boat to a little bit of bigger boat, getting more passengers, so to speak, to a bigger lifeboat, etc., etc. About 17 years ago, when my son was 17, he helped me homeschool at the house. My daughter and my son they were finished with their studies, and they were helping me homeschool. And I met this woman, Tamara, who works still at the school. And her daughter was 10 and couldn't read a word. And she had been to the best Catholic schools, best Christian schools, best private schools, best psychologists, best psychiatrists, and all they wanted to do for Natalie was drug her. Drug. And the mom's like, will this teach her to read? She goes, no, it'll just make her okay with it. It's like, who wants to be okay with not being able to read? Again, there's a technology. If we teach the correct technology, the girl will be able to read. So the mom decided to enroll her in my homeschool. It was Christmas break when I met them. Come January, and I told the mom, I'm like, look, she's not going to be in my group. I'm in my house. My 17-year-old son, who has 4 students, including my youngest son, who is the same age as Natalie, he's going to work with her, and we're going to send her back to kindergarten phonics. We're going to do a phonics program. She's going to get no homework. I don't want you doing flashcards. I don't want you quizzing her. If she wants to read, by all means, let her read.
Let me pause it for a moment. What age was she at this time?
10.
And so what grade level is that considered?
She should be in 4th, 5th grade. She couldn't read, so she was factually a kindergartner.
So you took her all the way back to the beginning?
All the way back to the beginning. I did do a standardized test. At the time, I used the California Achievement Test, which then I changed to the Terra Nova. California Achievement Test is standardized test, good in all 50 states. And I delivered it exactly per the time, for how you do it, etc., etc. And she tested out kindergarten, reading, math, language arts, 0.0, right?
Wow.
So my son takes her back to phonics. He has her make in clay letters. He has her build in clay, like the letter B. Now make 3 things that start with that sound. And she did it. Didn't matter how long it take, we're gonna leave her alone. Do it. How artistic, this isn't art class, whatever. And she did it. And she started mastering the alphabet. She started mastering sounds. We started with the short vowel, and then you Once she mastered that, then we went into the long vowel, and once she mastered that, we went into other things, right? The silent letters, et cetera, because English is complicated. We made sure that her reading books were kept at the level that she was learning. And if we embarrassed her too much with a low-level book, I'd have her read to the 5-year-olds that were coming to my house. So then she feels she has a responsibility to read these guys. Who cares if it's 100% perfect?
Right.
We don't care because we're teaching her. Within 9 weeks, my son, 17 years old, no certification, homeschooled, considered mentally handicapped, had the girl at a 3rd grade reading and math level. The mom flipped out. She's like, no professional has been able to do what your teenage hip hopper has been able to do. So she gave me $125,000 to move. Yep. I didn't ask her for a dime to move from my house to that location over there. We renovated it, slowly started paying her back. She didn't take a salary for 3 years because we just couldn't afford it. Right? We're starting. And now, 17 years later, my 27th year of doing this, I have an accredited private school. I have 99 kids. Our kids get diplomas. They go to universities. They go to Miami-Dade. They go to the Army. They go to technical schools as long as they have their requirements from us, which are the same as the state, and they meet the requirements of the school that they're going to. It's a good thing, and they get lots of attention. I keep my group small. To me, it's workable.
Right.
So now I'm full of like kids that, you know, when you meet a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old who's been on Prozac since they were 3, you're like, what? Mom, what are we doing? And they're like, well, the doctor said. I'm like, I don't care what the doctor said. Before the baby teeth have fallen out of the body, we have totally poisoned the body. And you can look at the child, and you can see that the child is not there.
Right.
Because a happy child is going to be all over the place.
Correct.
Doesn't mean they have bad manners. You know, like I say, I'm a very strict principal. I was a very on top of it mom, and I was a single mom. And I'm like, when I say clean up your room, the room gets cleaned or no one's going anywhere. If your room's not clean, end of discussion. We don't need to discuss it.
Right.
You know, again, my kids, when they were younger, they all had jobs. Hey, I want a drum set. Great. How are you going to help me pay for it? Solve it. Help me solve it. And they did, but they were educated. They weren't schooled. They weren't indoctrinated. And there's a huge difference. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about that.
Quite interesting. Like I say, today, what's the quantity of kids get drugged each year now, or some type of drugs?
Well, trying to find that statistic is hard, and I don't believe what's out there anyway. I think it's very high. Out of the 99 kids I have in my school, 88 of them have been drugged until they couldn't learn by a professional, and they come here, and we have 86% every year about that go up on their test scores, and you see a drastic increase in their reading, writing, and math, with a drastic decrease of homework and stress and this, that, and the other. One thing I won't touch Common Core, the books aren't even allowed in the building.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because it's twisted. It's just twisted. I'm like, Common Core should be renamed as how to make it the hardest for the child to understand. Let's make all children fail is Common Core.
So in other words, you say it's a confusing curriculum.
It's purposely confusing. It's purposely confusing.
That's a big word, purpose.
Purposefully confusing. Well, you have Pearson Education, which is the #1 curriculum company in the world, who I believe in 2013, they purchased a biomedical company to research ADHD. So, confuse the kids, they label the kids, and now they're going to drug the kids. So they have the whole market on it.
Yeah, it seems like we've been marketing every kind of angle possible.
Right, and I want to tell you something else that Pearson has done. They publish under McGraw-Hill, Scott Horaceman, several titles, right? McGraw-Hill got in trouble a few years ago for their 5th grade social studies textbook, which I have you can Google this.
Okay.
And they're changing history. And it's like the slave trade from the 1500s to the 1800s brought millions of workers from Africa. Workers from Africa.
That's a big difference between workers and slaves.
Yeah, because now we're making it look like a job opportunity.
Right.
It was not voluntary at all. So these kids that are growing up in this system, they don't get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I had a boy who, he's Chinese, and he speaks Chinese with his parents are Chinese. That's the language they speak. They hire me to tutor him because his sentence structure is low. He's a 7th grader, 8th grader, but his sentences, his English is not as fluent as his Chinese. So he needed to do an essay on World War II and why World War II happened. First thing, he could only use the approved public school website. He goes, I already know you're going to not like it. I'm like, that's right, because
So
nobody...
you couldn't use Google.
He couldn't research. And I'm like, no one has the right to tell you how to research something. Your research is your research. That's the only... Your judgment is your judgment. You need to be able to decide.
I have never heard of controlled research.
Yes. Well,
that sounds so out of there.
right. Well, it's an indoctrination. So I'm like, we'll look at it. I'll look at it. Hitler was a bad man. That's all it said about Hitler.
What about the Holocaust? What about...
It didn't bring up the Holocaust. It didn't bring up the rights that Hitler took away. It didn't bring up the genocide. It didn't bring up that people that were homosexual, that were black, that were Jewish, that were low IQ, that were special needs. They were exterminated. Children were exterminated, right? It didn't talk about any of that. It brought up finances. And I'm like, Denny, a very bad man is the guy who works at McDonald's who shortchanges you. But he's not a psychopath.
Right.
Right? He's bad. Hitler was not bad. It's a million people. And this kid sitting across from me, he's like, why would he do that? I go, because he was building the perfect race. He wanted blonde, blue-eyed. And he's like, well, you would be safe. I go, right, because I have a good IQ, I'm blonde, blue-eyed, and I have a German heritage. You would not be safe.
But he was shocked with that remark.
He was shocked. And I'm like, that's what we should be teaching our children, because history repeats itself. It will stop repeating itself if enough of us are educated.
Right.
Anyway, my children now know, I have no grandchildren yet, but come the day that I get grandchildren, regardless of where the children are, my kids are, they know their kids aren't going to step foot in daycare or school. It's like, oh no, we're going to homeschool. Or if they're here, they'll come here. Because they don't want somebody who's been educated on, oh, there's the chemical imbalance. Yeah, we'll name the chemical.
Yeah, we're just doing a lot of acronyms out here, a lot of words, but we don't have a real foundational truth to it.
Yeah.
Or what's the real source of what caused it, what triggered it.
Yeah, well, the psychiatrist will say there is no test for ADHD because there is no test. Now I'm going to tell you something. All right, so obviously we've been talking for 5 or 6 minutes, so you know I'm a strong person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if somebody comes after my child, I'm going to come at you like Mother Bear, like a
Course,
lioness, right?
Course.
As any mother should. So I think it was 2006. There was the Adolescent Psychiatric Convention on Miami Beach. And I'm like, I'm going to go check it out. And I went with a friend, someone like you actually, who had a camera. And I wanted to go very neutral. Because if you come at somebody strong, they're going to shut up, right?
You need to go defensive mode.
Right. So I was in jeans. I had a hole in my jeans like I'm vacationing at the Fountain Blue, which was where the psychiatric convention was. And we had the camera, and I'm like, hi, I'm on an internship for CNN. I lied. I lied, people. I lied. I'm like, I'm on an internship for CNN, and I'm brushing up my interviewing skills, and I'm going to submit this when I'm done vacationing, right? I've interviewed brides and grooms. A lie. I was there for the psychiatrist, and they talked to me, and it was horrifying what I'm hearing. I'm like, so, about the chemical imbalance, what's the name of the chemical? Oh, we don't know. I'm like, okay, so balance. So what test do you do to say, like, what test do you do to test this imbalance that you cannot name? Oh, well, there really isn't a test, it's guesswork. I go, okay. So what if I'm too much of a certain chemical? You know, like, if you have high cholesterol or high blood pressure or high whatever, or low, there's a blood test that tells you.
Right.
If you have high cholesterol, you take pill A. If you have low cholesterol, you take pill B. In psychiatry, you take pill A for everything, pill B for everything, pill C for everything. So I'm like, okay, so that's how you prescribe. And I'm like, how do you know it works? Well, we tested on lower animals. And I'm like, there's some poor raccoon out there getting tested. I made a joke. But now let me say that. Okay, let me say something on that. Again, I was not challenging in this interview, but I am like, this makes no sense. I don't know how we can compare a rat, a lab rat, to a human. There is no comparison. There is no rat. We'll take my life, for example, who can raise 5 children and open up a school. You can't compare it that way, right? We can't compare it physically either, because we could take all the women that were born on my birthday, born on my birthday. We're all different. We all have.
Life is different.
That's right. We all have pluses. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. But that doesn't mean we're not valid as humans. Right? So this psychiatry, this psychology wants us all the same and nice and slow. So I'm doing these interviews, and I ask this one woman, I'm like, have you ever diagnosed without meeting the patient? She goes, oh, we do it all the time. If a mother struggled with math, the DNA prevents the children from learning math. I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't compute.
It doesn't compute. Just look at it. Like, my grandmother was born in the 1800s. She got a 6th grade education, because back in those days, by the time you were 15 and 16, you were married. By the time she was 15, 16, she was married. She had 13 children. When she passed away, when she was 97, she had 101 grandchildren. That's a big family. 5 generations, but that's a large family. We can't compare her to a woman of today. It's a different
world.
It's a different world. Anyway, so just going back to this, to me, it's just blanket drugging. And now that I have the private school, every year without fail, I get representatives from a drug company pushing their product here. Because when a drug comes out on the market, or the FDA is going to approve something, let's say it's going to be for teeth whitening.
Okay.
You have to test it on many different patients to see the safety, the side effects. There's a drug study, and it's a controlled study. Well, where do they get the patients? They're going to go to the dentist. They're going to go to the dental schools. So when they're testing ADHD medications, where do they go? They go to the daycares, they go to the charter, they go to the public, they go to the private schools. Check this out. Intuitive was coming out on the market. I believe this was 2007, 2006. I could have the year wrong, but it's around there. The drug reps come to my school, and there was 3 levels of participation in this drug study. They're selling this to me. The first level is for every name, address, and phone number I give to the drug study, I get $100. The check could be made out to me personally, or it could go to the school. Because let's face it, Barbara, your school's in a shopping center, and it's kind of small and ugly. Like, I'll hold on to that one for a second. Level 2 participation was if I do a mental health checklist on the child, and they gave me the checklist. It was 25 points, I believe. One of the points was if they can't cut, if a 3-year-old can't cut with scissors, it's a sign of a mental illness. I'm like, what 3-year-old gets scissors? Who's giving a 3-year-old scissors?
Of course.
That's ridiculous. So there's no way a child could pass this mental health exam. Only does well with things he's interested in. Like the rest of the world.
And it's kind of similar, the same kind of checklist they have in school now.
It's kind of the same. They're all very similar.
Right.
There are shades of gray that some angry adults like, oh, well, they don't want to sit in their chair. Okay, adult, did you sit in a chair for 8 hours straight? Can you do that?
No.
Are you going to write a book report with every book you read? Are you going to focus 100% when you're at the movie theater, or do you check your phone? Oh, if you check your phone, ADHD, come on.
We have a drug for that.
We have a drug for that. Did you lose your keys this week? We have a drug for that. Did your dog mess up in the house because you forgot to let him go outside? Oh, there's a drug for that. It's a lie. Anyway, so for the second, if I do a mental health checklist on the kids, name, address, and phone number, and submit it to the drug study, I get $500 per mental health checklist, right? And it's objective, meaning I look at the child. I don't have to interview them. Plus, I have no training for mental health. Okay, wait. There's the third level of participation for intuitive. If I sit with you and get you to enroll your son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter, niece, nephew, onto the drug study to where your child's going to start taking drugs, I get $5,000 per child that I get on drugs. And check it out, $5,000 per child for intuitive at the time. And I was told by the drug reps that I was the only one in South Florida to say no. Like, this is insane. They're like, Barbara, how are you, educators don't make that much. How are you going to get a car? How are you going to get a house? I'm like, how am I going to sleep at night?
Right, you hear that? $5,000 per child. That's a strong incentive to put your kids on drugs.
That's right. Well, that is the incentive. I would rather get $5,000 for every child I saved. Offer me $5,000 for every child that I teach to read, or one of my teachers teaches to read, or we get them to overcome their shyness, or we get them to overcome their anxiety, or we have a child who gets nervous in front of people who's suddenly singing in front of their parents, or they start reading, or they go to college after they hated school. Give me $5,000 for that, and I'll be able to move out of here. I'm in a shopping center because I don't get funded. I charge tuition, and tuition pays the bills, kind of barely, but
it's insane.
It is insane.
And what's so sad about it is so much of the community do not know anything of this. They don't know the level of play action and motion to capture your kids.
That's
Use them
right.
as cattle. It's almost sound like what we do with cows and pigs to prepare for the slaughter and make them available for the market.
That's right. Well, exactly, because we're just dumbing them down, and we're indoctrinating them into some of these kids, it's like, again, there is nothing honestly special about me. I'm a passionate parent. And that's really all I am. I'm a passionate parent. But like I say, when my son wanted a drum set, when the other one wanted an electric guitar, when this one wants paints and canvas, I'm like, okay, you got to help me solve it. So they grew up with that mentality. Right now I have 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds that don't even do their own laundry. I'm like, mom and dad, or the parents, all they want to do is play video games. I'm like, and I wonder who bought all of the system for that.
Exactly.
You wanted them out of your hair, so you gave them a device so they no longer communicate to you, and now you're going to complain? Sorry.
Yeah, that's a major part that we have to play on this era.
We're all responsible. I'm not going to attack the public school system, I mean, I don't like it, and I think the public school system is very arrogant, and they're not gonna fix themselves. I think the homeschooling market, what I wanna do is build a homeschooling market to where what I do for kindergarten, I'm not there yet, but what I do for kindergarten, if you wanted kindergarten and you wanted to start a kindergarten at your church or wherever you wanted to start a kindergarten, I say, okay, Tyrone, I have all the materials and I have the exact teacher guide on what they should do so that we could get other people having the success that I'm having without going through the colleges, because the colleges are brainwashing the teachers to think there's something wrong with the kids. It's not the kids, it's what we're teaching them and how we're teaching them, and labeling them with mental illnesses when actually it's just normal childhood behavior.
Right.
You know, one more point. In my day, I sound really old. My parents had 5 children. I'm number 4. My parents didn't get matching furniture until all 5 of us were out of the house, because they knew we were crazy. Because they would go to the grocery store. We knew we couldn't play football in the house. We played football in the house. We tore that house up because we're kids. My parents were like, oh, the house, you know, noisy, thumping, bumping, ping pong in the dining room, you know, wherever it wasn't supposed to be. What made my parents most nervous is when the house was quiet, full of kids. Then they knew something was wrong.
Yeah, it was up to no good.
It was up to no good. So it was a noisy, rambunctious house. We all had chores. We had to do the chores. We weren't given things because you only got allowance if you worked for it.
Right.
You didn't mow the lawn, you didn't get paid for it. You know, so we've gone so far from that to where now, oh, he's got anxiety. He's afraid to make mistakes. I'm like, give me a break.
Yeah, we have a lot we need to, I say, reverse. I always say go back to the foundation that made you successful, that worked.
Right.
We have plenty of history to show things that worked and did not work.
That's right.
We got to stop putting the problems off to somebody else and hoping they get fixed, because this is not working with our kids at all.
That's right.
And from what I understand, some of the drugs that we prescribe to the kids today is equivalent to crack cocaine. I think what is the Prozac
Meth and Adderall is almost the same as meth. It's almost the exact same chemical compound. And again, it doesn't make sense. If I say, hey, Tyrone, come over to my house, I'm going to cook for you, but I can't cook well. And you go, let me give you some meth. That's going to help you out. Like, it ain't going to help me. I was going to burn my kitchen down.
No, of course not. Of course
You're not going to do that. Hey, I can't. I'm nervous behind the wheel. Well, let me give you some speed. That's not going to handle it. I can't read very well. I can't write very well. Well, guess what makes you read very well? Practice what write very well. And like I say, there's a technology, and I want to show something. I don't know how long I have. But
Sure, all the time.
okay, so
This is my show. Yeah, so plenty of time.
plenty of time. Good. Okay, so this was in the 40s. This is called Reading with Phonics. This is the teacher's edition. Now, in the 40s, and again, I didn't research this too heavily, but in the 40s, the illiteracy rate in the United States was 2.7% of people were illiterate. To be fair, that probably did not include minorities, and it probably did not include women. But I'll take it. Let's just assume it's 2.7 white men were illiterate. It's still a statistic, right? Now, only 10% of our country can read above an 8th grade level. That's horrific. That means out of the entire United States is going to be carried on the backs of 32 million people. There's only 32 million people who are capable of solving problems, right? So let's go back to the 40s where this statistic was. In management, when you're running a company and you see your statistics went way high in June and then they crashed in July, well, you want to know, what did you do in May that got the statistics up?
Of course.
Right? So we have a very low illiteracy rate in the 40s. So this was how they taught reading. And the actual textbook that was given to the kids is in the back. And they did it very simply. They introduced a letter of the alphabet. They didn't do it all at once. You learn the sounds, like here is duh, you add the G, Doug, because they learned it, right?
Right.
Simple. This is phonics. This was laughed out of existence by the psychologists. They said it was too simple and they replaced it with whole word. Your light went out. I don't know if you want to.
Nice.
Okay. They replaced it with whole word. So now our illiteracy rate goes up. You're like, okay, I want to go back to this. So I'm building on my free time a program that uses this plus study technology. This is a book that I have my students in high school read. I train my teachers on it.
Learning how to learn.
Learning How to Learn. It's by L. Ron Hubbard, who is the founder of the Church Scientology and Dianetics. I do not teach Scientology or Dianetics. None of my students go to the Church Scientology. But this can be applied to any subject with great success. And this is the success I've had with my children. And when I was struggling with my son Damon, this book was recently written, and on the first page, page 1, you can learn anything you want to learn. There's no psychologist or psychiatrist who will make that statement.
Right.
L. Ron Hubbard makes that statement. You can learn anything you want to learn. And you go through here, and he talks about, this is super simple, by the way. Like, before you can learn about something, you have to want to learn about that thing. There's got to be a want.
Right. A desire.
A desire. I wish I could decorate cupcakes the way they do on TV. Well, good. We're going to put you in a cupcake class. I have the desire to improve my skills. I do not have the desire to shoot a basketball. Somebody else has that desire, right? So this gets into individuality. Because with me, with 4 children, 5 with the extra boy, they all could have come from different parts of the world because they're all completely different. Do I love one more than the other? No. Is one more important than the other? No. Are any of their interests invalid because they're not the same? No. They're all individuals and they all bring something. Now that my children are grown, even when they were little, they all brought something to the table. It made my family so enjoyable because they were all different.
Right. Not everybody likes the same flavor of chicken.
That's
Barbecue,
a good way to put it.
lemon. And it seems like we're in a time now where we're trying to control the mindset of people. Give one type of thought, one type of vision, one type of mindset as a whole, which undermines productivity as a society as a whole.
That's right. Well, one, not everybody can be an Indian chief.
Right.
But everybody can treat the janitor with the same respect that you do the chief. You know, there's no shame in having a job.
No.
It's important to have that purpose. And if education is done right, I feel our drug problem will drastically lower. Our crime problem will drastically lower. My kids never got in trouble. Why? Because they were too busy to get in trouble. They were making money. And they had their own little businesses. And in my school, we have kids with their own little businesses. We have a little boy who paints rocks. And he sells them for $1. Now, if a child comes to me with some rocks that he worked hard to paint, you can imagine, I'm going to spend some money on it.
That's an encouraging mechanism.
He's giving me an exchange.
Right.
Right? And it was super sweet. This particular boy, I think he was 7 at the time, one of our teachers lost her dog. Family pet, been in the family for years and years, and the dog passed away. And the teacher was crying. And the boy, a picture of her, and she goes, sure. And he painted a rock with Luna on it. Now, how valuable is that?
Yes.
That's worth $1 he charged. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so He went home and instead of playing on video games, he did something nice for the teacher. He was not expecting to get paid. He did get paid. And then his brother writes these crazy comics. And so I pay him to write comics about my kids. I'm like, write something. And he'll come up with something outlandish. And it's hilarious. And yeah, some of the words are misspelled. And yeah, the artwork is whatever. You know, I've seen a psych report where it says the child's artwork is immature in nature. Like, it's a child.
Yes,
it's a child.
I tell you, the mindset of some of these educators is very questionable.
Yeah, well, it's the expert that, to me, the expert frightens me. And, you know, going back to learning how to learn, one of the most important things that's stressed here is knowing the definitions of words. You got to look and you got to know for yourself, right? And that's a dangerous thing to teach these days. To have your own counsel, your own decision.
Right.
You're going outside of the indoctrination.
Right.
So in 27 years, for example, kids come in and I tutor outside of the school, like kids from public schools or private schools, they come to me. And I love tutoring the 5th, 6th grader, 4th, 5th, and 6th. That's my favorite age to tutor. And one for one, they're always confused on fractions. And the parents are confused on fractions. And I'm like, okay, according to this, first question I ask, what's the definition of the word fractions? I'm not going to ask you, Tyrone.
Yeah, don't embarrass me. I
won't embarrass you.
I'm actually have a question in my head also.
All right. And in 27 years, the parent and the child, no one's been able to give me the proper definition. And when I go over the proper definition and I draw it out so they see it, and there's a demonstration that goes with it, and you tell the parent, you tell the child, there's only about 20 words to fully understand their function, their purpose, what they are, to fractions, and you will never be confused about fractions for the rest of your life. And they're like, whoa, and that's this. Because that's how you want to be educated. You don't want to be educated to pass a test. And oh, let me remember in 1869, was that when Louisiana became a state or Ohio became a state? Who cares? What's the procedure to become a state? You know? I'll tell you something interesting, then I'll shut up for a while. We were, our high schoolers were learning different styles of political, like communism, socialism, etc. And we go for the throat on this in high school. And in any school, you have the kids that really work hard to get that A and maintain that A, and you have the kids that can care less, who are happy with a D minus, they want to just pass, and you have the kids that don't do anything, right? So there's a mix.
Right.
So for communism, we go over the definition of communism, find out by hand who thinks communism is the way to go. And there's teachers, which is fine, they can have their opinion. I'm not going to shoot down the opinion. So the teacher's like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to practice communism this week. I'm going to average all of the math grades. You're going to share. You with the A, you're going to share your A. And the room, it was like, what? There was like a little rebellion, right?
Wait, I put in all this extra work, and you're gonna share it with them?
That's right. So our A students became C minus, and our F students became C minus. And she changed it in the grade book. So if you go online, you see it. We switched it back, of course. But the students were outraged, and I'm like, and some of them were very happy. Day 2 of communism, most of the kids didn't do their homework because there was no point. Right? She goes, okay, so how motivated are you, A student, to maintain that A? Like, not motivated at all. Good. And how motivated are you, F student, D, C, F student, to improve your scores? Not at all, because you guys are carrying me. Good. But welcome to communism. Now we're going to do the next one. You know, and it's, that's really how you have to do it, because you have to demonstrate. Otherwise, you're just reading from a textbook and it's over there and it's not here.
If you can make it as real as possible where they can, like I say, sense it all,
Right.
smell it, taste it, feel it,
Experience it.
It sticks.
Right.
Not just here, but here as well.
That's right. When the earthquake happened in Haiti, I'm like, okay, guys, what are we going to do? And at that point, there was a blood bank in the shopping center, and we had a whole bunch of kids donate blood, which I thought was very brave. They were 16, so they had to get waivers, parent signatures, and we went over, and it was a bunch of high school boys. They're like, Miss, will you hold my hand, because the needle is huge. But the point is they solved it. I mean, they didn't solve Haiti,
Right.
but they did something.
Right.
Every single one of the kids did something. We had somebody hold a water drive. I'm like, good, we're going to hold a water drive. And then we walked to Publix. Look, I want you to donate 3 cases. Of course, Publix will donate 3 cases. I'm not asking them for a lot of money.
Right.
They can donate 3 cases, and we end up with all of this water. Then we call the fire department. They come and they pick it up, and the kids feel like they've accomplished something.
They contribute something to.
They contributed something.
Right.
It had nothing to do with them.
Right.
Anyway, to me, that's how education should be. Is my school perfect? Not at all. You know what I'm saying? But I'm out there.
Right.
And I won't ever say drug your child. You'll never hear that.
And I understand when kids come to your door and they've been labeled with some type of problem and with some type of drugs, first thing you let them know is that you don't have a
Right? The one thing that I do, is I ask, when you enroll in my school, the parents have to watch this. And this is a documentary about a woman who lost her snout over test at school. And this is an all-American family. This isn't a wealthy family. This isn't poverty, but this is this family, right? A good family. And they lost their teenager. He committed suicide. And your heart just breaks for this woman.
Yes, I caught a good portion of it, and I tell you, it's I would say a required viewing, because just the misperception that prescribed to the kid that led him down that road is horrendous, because that's your child.
That's right.
And once they go, you can't get them back.
You can't get them back. And she did everything the experts told her to do, and she ended up losing her child. I would have lost my son if I would have followed the experts' advice. Oh, he can't learn. Really? Then how's he bilingual? Tell me that. Oh, he can't focus. Well, then how can he focus on video games for 8 hours a day? Oh, that's a different part of the brain. Bullshit, it's not. Sorry, it's not. It's the same brain.
Right.
Right? So when you come into the school, you have to watch this. I don't care if your child's been drugged or never been drugged. You know someone who has, and I want to raise awareness. If you don't watch it, you go to a different school. Totally fine. There's millions of them in Miami. This is an excellent, excellent tool, and it's very informative because they don't only just get into this woman's story, it gets into other women's stories with their own children, and they're horrific. And I can guarantee you this. This boy who got stressed out over test, I guarantee you that the family would prefer him stressed out over test than no longer on this earth.
Of course. Yeah, it was very hard to watch it all the way through.
Yeah.
Because I think about myself at that age and the things I struggled with as a kid. I couldn't sit too long, whether it's in church or in school. I always had to be on the move. I need to have my hands doing something and such. So I did hear about kids today sitting from first period to sixth period without recess, PT time, physical education time.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
It'll
Plus
drive me crazy.
3 hours of homework at night.
Oh, that just blows me away.
Right.
Why are you doing to school all this time to have 3 hours worth of homework afterward?
Plus, the 3 hours of homework scientifically hasn't been proven to do anything except get the family and the kid to hate school.
Right.
And the learning process, honestly, is so natural It's so natural. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to have my godchildren over, 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're being homeschooled. Anything I do with them at my house, whew, they are right there. If we're going to make cookies, if we're going to make muffins, if we're going to do whatever we do, they're going to be right there. We're going to do Christmas ornaments. They are going to be engaged. They love learning. Most kids love learning. I haven't found one child yet who hates learning. They hate it because it's being done in school all wrong.
Being shut down your throat like a bad tasting meal.
That's right, exactly.
There's a method to everything.
That's right.
And we really need to find out the right method to bring up the education level of our kids.
That's
Because
right.
they're our future generation. If they're dumb going into the future, what shall be our state when we get older?
Right.
I mean, if I meet my son, we need this younger generation to have the know-how to help us out in our older age. And if they feel like they was never cared for or attended to properly as they're growing up, what kind of love they're gonna show back to us when they get older?
Right. Well, what problems can they solve? Because that's also part of education, is being able to solve a problem. Not just exist day to day, but actually have the mindset of, I don't know if we're still on or not. Okay. The result of education is that you can solve the problems of living quite well. So either I'm going to rob you because I have no options, or I'm going to start homeschooling my children when I'm 28 years old out of a 400 square foot apartment, and then I'm going to grow it and grow it and grow it. And despite hurricanes and despite a divorce, I'm going to grow it and grow it and grow it, and then I end up with a private school. That's kind of crazy, but that was my vision.
Right.
Eventually, and like when I first started, like I said, I was in a boat that was sinking. So let me solve the problem right now. Let me get my son out of school. I need to get my son back, and I got him back. Thank God.
Right. Well, let me check this here.
Sure.
Quick. Before we close here, I understand there's, like in this DVD, there's literature informing parents what they can do about not letting the kids become victims of screens by psychiatrists without their knowledge.
Right.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay. Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is CCHR. You can go to cchrflorida.org, I believe, and they will have forms. They're consent forms where you refuse to have your child evaluated in school. You have the right to say no, right? Schools cannot tell you your child has to be on medication or they'll be dismissed. They can't. They're breaking the law, and I'm going to say it happens every day. Right? You can go onto my website, helpmiami.org, and I have a link to the Dead Wrong DVD. I also have a page that says, what can you do? And it gives you questions you can ask if you are confronted with a teacher or a doctor who is saying that your child needs to be medicated. And they're very pointed questions, like, what's the name of what test are you going to do to prove it? What's the name of the chemical? And who do I consult, or who do I sue if this goes wrong? Like, because honestly, if everyone who was wronged by these drugs sued,
Things would be changed overnight.
We also have the situation in the United States where the drug companies for psychotropic, well, any drug, they advertise to the consumer. Anytime you watch TV, there's going to be a drug advertisement.
Right.
We can no longer advertise cigarettes. I think it should be the same for the drugs. We shouldn't be able to advertise drugs because that's the wrong message. Like, oh, I don't sleep at night. Oh, there's a drug for it. Okay, what about how much coffee do I drink? How much soda do I drink? I find out that I'm drinking coffee, eating ice cream.
issues, all these mental issues from a nutritional standpoint.
Right. Well, I can tell you on any of the checklists, there's another standpoint as well. Nutrition is key, and parents are key.
Right.
None of the mental health checklists, none of them that I have seen in the last 27 years says, how much quality time does this child spend with his mother or father? Do the parents fight in front of him? Do the parents call him stupid? Do the parents talk about him to strangers, right? Do they have dinner together? Does the child contribute? Does he have chores? Like, is there a structure? They never ask any of that, right? They don't ask, what is he eating? What does he have for breakfast? What does he have for lunch? How many vegetables does he have? Like, they never ask anything.
Seems like they just have a beeline to put them on drugs so they can get paid.
That's right. There's a payout for it.
And I understand a lot of, I wish I had this here form from one particular doctor's book. It's showing all these different drugs and how they deplete certain nutrients from your body. Vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, magnesium, copper, iron. A lot of things that our body need in order to stay stable and
Right.
sound. So if the drugs are depleting those type of things from you, then how is the drug really helping you out?
Right. Well, and plus you even have the word side effect. It's not a side effect, it's a primary effect. It may affect you differently than it affects me, right? But it's a primary effect. If we, even wine, okay, we have a glass of wine right now. Now, I don't drink alcohol much, so I don't know your habits, but a little bit's gonna go a long way for me,
Right.
right? That's how I'm going to react because my body has no defense against it. And I'm not saying don't drink or I'm not any of that. But you may, we drink wine with every meal. So you react differently. But the effect is it's going to slow you down or it's going to,
Right.
you're going to get lightheaded, whatever.
Right.
That is the effect.
Right.
Right? So if I say, okay, yeah, my son was struggling in school, so I gave him a drug that was like cocaine. But I only give it to him on school days, and I don't give him over the summer. I'm like, are you kidding me? He only gets it 180 days out of the year. Well, we've just altered his body. It's heartbreaking. He was struggling in school. And after the mother put him on the ADHD medication, he starts going like this. And she took him off, and he's still going like this.
Yes, because I understand, like, meth can stay in your system for years after years, even after you stop taking it.
Right, and that's an adult. What happens to a child whose bones and brain and nervous system is
Is about how bad this is going to develop even more.
Yeah.
It's already terrible. It's terrible, but it can get worse and worse if we don't get involved, make a difference.
That's right. That's right. What I would like to see, or I'll tell you, like years ago, and I'm talking years ago in the 70s, I believe the Christians knew what was coming because there was a huge wave of homeschooling. It was unheard of to homeschool. Of homeschooling. It was controversial. Now, it's not as controversial because it's so successful. It's to get churches, groups pulling together, get 5 or 6 kids together. You don't have to have 99.
Right. The smaller class is more productive you are anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And have this, I'm almost done with this part, by the way, the literacy part. But where we can share my experience and I can say, good, this is what your kindergarten should look like. This is what your first grade should look like. This is what your second grade should look like. so that if you want to put it into a Baptist church, Catholic church, whatever, it can go there. Or a homeschooler, it's like, I want to homeschool, I have no idea where to go. Okay, here you go. And it wasn't authored by a psychologist or Pearson who hopes to confuse the child so that they get them on the back end on the drugs.
Right. Well, people, again, Divine Image Productions, giving the right outlook, highlighting real life challenges, but with a solution. And we share a lot of solutions to help you, your child, and your community. We can go on and on, but we'll say that for another time. A lot of valuable information is given here. Look into it. cchr.org, helpmiami.org,
Right.
resources. An informed community is with wise implications, can be a community that is effective against things that undermines our society. Until next time, be blessed.
Thank you. That was great.